It's certainly not all rosy in the garden being an entrepreneur, and it's not been an easy journey, and it's still not an easy journey now.
Right, hello everybody, and welcome to episode 1, series 1 of Taking Care of Business, the brand new Sedulo podcast and interview series. My name's Alicia Ambrose Bailey, and tonight I will be interviewing Paul Cheetham-Karcz, who is the founding member and managing partner of Sedulo itself. He's going to be talking to us about his business, what drives him, what's got him to where he is now, and he'll be talking through some of the podcasts that we've got coming up and the very exciting special guests that he's going to be speaking to. So welcome, Paul.
Thank you. Thank you for interviewing me.
Yeah. How does it feel to be on the other side of the...
Oh, we'll see. I'll be on your side next time.
Yeah, true.
So we'll see which is the easiest, which is the hardest.
Well, I think you'll be great. So lots of people watching this will already know about you and about Sedulo, but for the benefit of those who haven't really heard much, tell us a bit about yourself, where you're from, your background, that kind of thing. Okay, cool. So I am from Reddish, which is based in Stockport. Stockport's in Greater Manchester. I grew up there. It's a very working class area. So I spent virtually the first 25 years, I guess, of my life growing up around there. Went to school around there. My grandparents, it was that kind of 80s. I was born in 78. So it was kind of that 80s growing up. Where I was from, most people lived in that kind of grandparents lived in that kind of council estate type scenario. So I grew up around there, went to the school. I was okay in school, Reddish Vale I went, which was a local high school there. And at that age, I was always going to get reasonable GCSEs, not amazing. I was always going to get some reasonable ones. They tried to get me then to get a job, because that's how the systems kind of worked in 94 when I left school. It was like, you're going to get some good GCSEs, so go and get a job. And they tried to get me a job as a mechanic. And I went on the first day and I looked at, I think about 10:15, I decided that wasn't my route. They were looking at the watch, they were saying it was bacon butties, I think, at 11 o'clock or something, and it was like 10 o'clock was like, we've only got 1 hour. Yeah. Then it was bacon butty time, they had them. Then it was like, only got 2 hours for lunch. Then it was like breaks at 3:30. And then I'm just looking around at like the age of 15 thinking that this is not for me. Right.
So I did that. It was a 2-week work experience, and on the last day, the guy who run the mechanics garage said to me, "So Paul, is this for you? Do you want a job here when you leave school?" And I said, "Yes, of course." But I remember thinking, there's no fucking way. That's my life. They just literally was on countdown from Monday morning to Friday. So I decided I wanted to do something very, very early on that I enjoyed doing. And I enjoyed sport at the time. So originally it was go and do some A-levels, PE, biology, English I did. Did that, went and did a sports science degree as my original degree. And it was like, let's be a PE teacher. And then again, I got the pay scales through for a PE teacher at the age of 21, just left uni. And I seen again, there was a very rigid pay scale of what I was going to be earning when I was 30, 40. And I guess I always had in me, I don't want to have that ceiling, right, or that glass ceiling put on me from such an early age. I didn't know what I was capable of course. I didn't know what I was going to be, what I was going to do. So, but I kind of just knew that I didn't want to have that ceiling. I didn't want to be part of that infrastructure. So I put out there for a job, got a job, and then I seen in the Manchester Evening News there was a vacancy for an accountant, and I had no idea what an accountant was. I didn't have a clue what an accountant was, but I applied for the job and somehow I got it. There was actually a very fast growing business at the time that was recruiting 10, 20, 30 accountants from a graduate trainee perspective. So I think that the timing was great for me. It was good fortune that I'm sure if there was one job going for an accountant, I wouldn't have got the job, if you get what I'm saying, because I had no idea what one was. But I got the job, and that was it really. What I did kind of like at the age of 21 was it gave me another 3 years of very tiered qualifications, professional courses that I was going to go on. So I guess it gave me the infrastructure at the time that I needed very short term, without kind of putting me in a...
Because did you bypass university or did you go?
No, so I went to university, but I did a sports science degree.
Right, okay.
So I did that for 3 years in Staffordshire, and it was only then that I decided being a PE teacher wasn't for me.
Yeah, not for you. And was this, at one point been your dream job? Had you ever had a dream job, or...?
I think like most kids, most boys, I guess, growing up, it was always like football.
Right.
And actually, I was pretty good at football when I was young. When I was 11, because I was quite tall, I was quite big. And what I realised when I got to about 12, 13, 14, that everybody caught me up.
Yeah.
And I went from being like, I guess, one of the better players at a really young age to just being one of the worst. So when that dream ended, it was how else could I do something in something I enjoyed doing? And that just naturally fed itself to PE teacher.
So the next question was going to be, how did you get from this kind of first job to where you are now? Because they're quite different.
Yeah. So as the very first job that I had, that was 5 years. It's weekend work in between college and university. That was a B&Q car park when I was a trolley boy. Right. So I used to collect trolleys in the car park for the first 5 years. And the chap Dean Schofield, actually, that I used to collect them with over that period of time, he ended up going on and captaining. Oh no, he didn't captain them, but he certainly played for England.
No way, he's still in touch.
Union. We are actually. I speak to him. It's mainly like everybody now through Facebook and social media and so on. But I just find sometimes it's funny when I ever bump into him, and he was like captain of Sale Sharks. He was England rugby union player, played throughout his whole career. I've ended up doing what I'm doing. It's a pretty successful story for two trolley lads, I guess, on the car parks in Ashton under line B&Q. But so that was the first job. But my first real job was the accountancy firm that I just discussed. Debt management is what they did, actually. So in them days, it was the late 90s. There'd been a credit crunch or whatever, and everybody seemed to be in debt. And in them days, what this business was able to do was take that stress from you by taking all your credit correspondence, dealing with it on your behalf, agreeing a payment plan that you could afford, and from there, they would look after all your debts for you. You didn't have to worry; they take away that stress. And as a result of that, it boomed. They had about 50,000 clients in no time. So I just took this job as an accountant, and then they come to me and they're doing some internal audit work. They said, "We want you to come and be the post room manager." And to me, it was just manager. I didn't even know what the post room was, and the fact for me, as somebody who was probably the first person in my family that I can remember even went to work in a suit, to the fact that I was in a suit and was being called the manager within about 8 weeks in the first job was like, I'll manage whatever you want. So I walk in, and 50,000 clients, and if they get 10 to 20, it's like 500,000 to 1 million pieces of correspondence that comes in every month. And some of it's severe consequences, like bailiffs, so they'll take your house off you, or it's got you going to court. So it has to get in pretty quickly and go out pretty quickly to be dealt with. But that wasn't what was happening here. It was going in, and there was 20 people when I walked in the room, and there were just hundreds of thousands of envelopes all over. They were under desk, there was on desk, there was in bags, and I'm looking at this, and 20 people are staring at me. Anyway, so they said, here's the problem, we've got to get all this post in on a daily basis, get it all open, sorted, send it out, get it to the right department. Some of this is crucial, some of you've got 7 days, we're going to take your home off you, or the consequences were like that. So I sit down, go in, I'm the only one in a suit, the rest of them are all in tracksuit bottoms and caps, and they were called the numpties.
And were they all the same age as you? Older, younger?
Well, I was 21,
yeah.
So I would say they was 18, 19,
okay.
I guess. It was like first job
yeah.
for people, and they were from the kind of solid Manchester suburbs, the Salfords, the Newton Eves, so they were very, very working class, mainly males, and you could tell they didn't care about the job, and it was quite an aggressive place to be. But so anyway, I start the job. I'm the only one in a suit. They're called the numpties, and I think, well, I'm from working class, maybe I can relate to them. So I start and drift on, and I go in every day, and nothing's really changing. To be honest with you, we might get through 20%, 30% of the mail coming in. The rest of it's just added to this backlog. And then the manager who gave me the job, my manager, came in about a week later and said, "So where are we at?" I kind of just remember looking around, feeling like I've done nothing here. Fuck all's changed. Nothing's happened. And I remember thinking, he looked at me, he wasn't disappointed because it was just part of what was going on there. But I remember him walking out and thinking, that's never going to happen to me again. I'm never going to let somebody come in having expected something from me and it not be delivered. So I changed it there and then he made some immediate changes. So the first thing I did was, I thought it must be boring if one person opens an envelope, passes correspondence to someone else who stamps it.
Right.
He passes it to someone else, and she sorts it, and then somebody else at the end gets it and takes it to the department. So there's no accountability there.
Yeah.
So somebody just stamps it. So I thought, I'm going to change it. Somebody gets it, whoever now gets the envelope does all the process and takes it to the person who's delivered it, because then he's accountable, one, for what he's doing in terms of volume, and two, whether or not he's took it to the right department or not. So that was the first thing, and it made the job less boring. I was also then able to introduce very, very simple spreadsheets that said, that person does 3 bundles a day, somebody else does 5 bundles a day, what's the difference, how do we get you up to 5, and so on and so forth. So I was able to then plan training in around that and measure it, which was an important thing. Next thing I did was to just bring a bit of fun and bring some competition. We tiered people, and we created, I think I was on £12,000 a year at the time, that was my salary. And out of my own money, I think the winner who got the most bundles in the week would get like £30, the runner-up would get 20, and whoever finished third would get a crate of beer or a bottle of wine or whatever. But I paid for that out of my own money. I didn't want to go to the bosses at the time and say, can we put this bonus through? I just wanted to prove that we could do it. So I put in, I guess, some rewards. Yeah. And it was clear that people in there, the other thing they did was ban how they wore, because they were called the numpties. They kind of played up for it. So it was like, lose the cap, lose the sports trainers. If you come in tomorrow and you're not in a suit or you're not dressed smart, you go home. So it's kind of bringing in some discipline. And the other part that I did was I started to, it was the year of like home computers. Home computers had just come out, and I think there was 2 people of the 20 that could use a computer in them days, and there was no computers in our office, but the rest of the business ran off computers. So I managed to get at the IT department to give us 3 home computers, fix them up for us because they were broken, and bring them down, and we started to train people on that. So they were getting training, development, measurement, accountability. We brought all those things in. I didn't know I was doing this. I didn't read a book. It just kind of came. I've got to do something.
It's like the sports psychology from wanting to be a PE teacher. Maybe that's
what it was.
Maybe that's what it is.
Actually, that project was as a teacher, actually, thinking about it now. But so, and then the final thing is, things started to work and it started to get better. Then I immediately called a local provider of training and said, look, I've got these 20 people. I'm training them on the job. I'm training them to be IT literate. And I want to give them some more training. What can you give them? I think they came up with NVQs in office administration and that kind of thing. And I appointed 3 supervisors who were dead young, 19 or 20. They got one on office management. So they put them on this course, all 20 of them. And it was a complete transformation. This all happened within a few days, by the way. And there was a transformation, I would say, from the week after. From the week after, we started to get close to dealing with the stuff that came in on a day-by-day basis. And within 2 weeks, we weren't only dealing with the stuff that came in, we were dealing with what we didn't do yesterday, the day before, and the day before, the day before. So it's an 8-week project in the end. Within 8 weeks, we were now getting to a point where we'd get through what would come in by lunchtime. Everybody was getting training every day. They'd ripped through these NVQs in record time for the training college that we'd appointed to do that. And the best part, so that was amazing, but the best part, we introduced some fun in there. It was that now a nice place to work. But what was the most rewarding part was the numpties, if you like, then went on, or a number of them went on to better jobs within the department, within their business. And before that, they really were kind of, they weren't touched or thought of. 2 went into finance, 1 went into IT, I think 1 went into HR, some went into customer service, because we'd effectively become this business unit within a business. Yeah. And I don't think there's anything that I've done. There's bigger numbers involved in everything I've done since then, but I don't think there's anything that's given me the sense of satisfaction, actually, as I got from those first 8 weeks.
Well, there's a lot of aspects of what you've spoken about there that are present in today's kind of culture of Sedulo, which we'll come on to later. But what everybody, I guess, is wanting to know is how Sedulo came about. What happened from then on to where you are sort of now, or day one of Sedulo, I should say. So
I did 3 years for that company. It was growing. I worked as an internal accountant for them. So after that position, so you're very hands-on when you do that. If you're an accountant within, really you're dealing with what's going to happen and what's happening now. Yeah. You might be talking about what's happened in the very short term. from a historical perspective. But and I enjoyed that because I was part of change. I was part of creating change, whether it went right or wrong. He was still part of creating it. So I enjoyed seeing that what we implemented worked or not. I then went to do 3 years in an accountancy practice. That's like the other side of the fence. And what you find if you go to an ordinary practice is what they're doing is make sure everybody's compliant. Right. Your tax returns in, your corporation tax returns in, your annual returns updated at company's house, and you've got your accounts done. And a lot of those things kind of need doing 9-12 months after your year end. So if it's 9-12 months after your year end, the first month of your year is can be almost 2 years away historically. And I kind of thought, what's the point in that? Who wants to know how good the business was from month 24 to month 12 if you were looking backwards? But that's compliance for you, I guess, and that's what a lot of practices do. So I did 3 or 4 years of that. I learnt, I guess, more basics, tax, corporate tax, personal tax. So I learned some more disciplines within the field of finance, but I didn't like the job. It wasn't hands-on enough for me. So when it got to a point where I thought I've learned as much as I can out of this job, I then looked to find a practice that offered that hands-on level of advisory.
And when you're saying hands-on, do you mean things that are happening now, reactive things? Or do you mean with people, or both?
Well, both actually, yeah. So I like working with people.
Yeah.
But I like working in teams where you're really doing things and making impact. And it's very difficult to find an accountancy firm that does that.
Right.
When I set up Sedulo version 1, let's call it, 12 years ago, it was even more, it just wasn't like that. Of course, you've got your huge top 10 or top 4 accountancy firms that do everything, but they're so huge. You've got you've got office blocks that focus on tax, personal tax, and another office block that focus on corporate finance. They're so big, they still don't kind of have that interlinking holistic view.
Well, yeah, I was going to say, if you're a self-employed person like myself, or you're a young start-up business, that's quite a daunting place to go to.
Yeah, exactly.
It's just big glass, faceless enterprise Death Star, isn't it?
Exactly. And as you grow, you need more. You need to start bringing in pensions. Yeah. You need to start bringing in different taxes for different things. So you do need the ability to tap in. Whether you're a small business or whether you're a large business, or you need the ability to tap into different facets of finance, and you're not going to get them in a large one. And so I thought there was a real gap to have a holistic advisory firm in Manchester at the time, dealing in the main at first with techies, creatives, media, and sports people, and that was our audience.
So when you say holistic, you mean it's more like a kind of delicatessen of services where you can pick and choose what you need. You don't have to have everything. You can just go, I just want you to do my tax, or I just want
exactly that.
Right.
But where there's always somebody pushing you to say, actually, you don't just need your tax, Alicia. Yeah. You need to focus on your pension because you're not doing A, B, and C. So it's that ability where the client comes in and they've got this array of services, but there's somebody looking at that's saying, oh yeah, we have your tax. You also need your year end. You need that. But by the way, you need this, and this. And then, of course, as the businesses grow, they need more facets. So I think that's one of the important parts because of why we're different. Because if you look at, even today still, you look at accountancy firms, I'll be honest with you, the people that always come to us, it's always because they're pushing their client to say, it might be on a small level, when do I become VAT registered?
Right.
But it shouldn't be the customer saying to the advisor, when do I do this? It should be the other way around, and I think that's a big difference between what we do. We're building businesses in the main is what we do, and as a result of that, we're constantly probing and pushing our clients to see, have they thought about this? And that's what I think is different about us the most. So I'm looking for a job, to go back to your question, thinking, where can I work? And I can't see anywhere.
Yeah.
So then I thought, sod it, let's just do it.
Yeah. And how did that happen? What did you do? Was it a kind of take out a credit card and get an office and off you go? Or
so the first part was I was going to do it, and I say Sedulo version 1 because there was a 3-year of Sedulo, and then what I class as Sedulo today. So there was 3 years where I left my job, and my manager at the time said, well, actually I wouldn't mind doing something myself. Why don't we both join up? So we did. So I had a partnership.
And this was the manager where you were the post room manager originally?
No, sorry, that was so when I went from the post room, when I went from the industry and I went to work for a practice.
Right.
And the manager of that practice, or one of the management in that practice, when he knew I was leaving, said, do you fancy, I'm going to leave. If you're leaving, why don't we do something together?
That's a good vote of confidence.
So that's what we did, but it didn't work because ultimately there's a million reasons why it didn't work, and I guess he'll have his. But my perspective was he was at a different stage of his life than me. He had a young family. I had no one. I was in my late 20s. I was just me, looking after me. I was so hungry, so driven, so wanted to build a brand, so wanted to create something that was a legacy. And I guess he had more. At the end of the month, he had to pay mortgages and bills, and so there's a completely different thing. We didn't get on in the end, but nevertheless, he had the client base. I didn't, so I think he thought he was always going to be my manager, and that was never going to work for me. I just got a credit card. So we're still together at this point, first 3 years. I got a credit card, 10k on it, and I bought a load of furniture for £5,000. We opened in Manchester, which was a big step to just say I'm going to do it on Deansgate, but we did. Opened it up, had £10,000 on a credit card, £5,000 went on doing it up, and I'll be honest with you, £5,000 went on a Rolex. They were my purchases. And the reason why I bought a Rolex, it wasn't to be flash or anything like that. It was because I felt like if I turned up at a meeting with somebody who said, who was looking at me and I was going to tell them I was going to grow their business, I felt like there needed to be something.
You couldn't wear Casio.
I felt like there needed to be something. I was constantly like talking to people, rubbing my chin and stuff, so they could see that I had a watch. And I'm not that bothered about watches and cars and that kind of stuff. But at that time, I thought it was an important statement purchase to say I'm successful way before I was. So that's what I did. It was on a credit card. It was 10k. We got an overdraft at the bank. I personally guaranteed it. We signed a 5-year lease in Barton Arcade on the centre of Deansgate, and I personally guaranteed it without thinking about it, because there was no way I could have afforded to have, if it came from me for those personal guarantees, I had nothing. So that's how we started. And we signed some. I went out and came up with a brand.
How did you come up with the name? What led you to?
Well, both me and him, to be fair, didn't want a name that represented, Cheetham-Karcz.
Another one of those.
Yeah. So we just hired a brand design agency, and I can't remember who it was now, but I think we only paid about £1,000 for it or something. They came up with Sedulo, which is Latin. Sedulous is Latin for marked by care and persistent effort, and I thought that's probably something that should stick with us forever. And we kind of going back to that brand now. We lost it a bit. We're going back to it. So that's how it started. I went around trying to sign clients, hustling away. He already had his client base, but I constantly wanted to grow mine. And actually, what happened over 3 years was he gently grew his, and I drastically grew mine.
Right.
And when it got to a point where my client base and his client base was similar, we just clashed. Whatever reason, we just clashed, and it was time to break up and launch what I class as Sedulo today, which is 9.5 years.
And that's also, we've moved here, so we're on Deansgate now, across the way. New office. I want to talk to you about the kind of office culture as well, because some people watching might not have been to our office yet. Obviously, a lot of what the clients get when they come in, we've got this fantastic space here called the Regency Club, and over in Leeds, we've got the Ambler Club. We do breakfast every morning, we do some afternoon teas, we've got themed meeting rooms, we do events. What led you to kind of want to incorporate that into the business model?
It makes us very different and stand out in the crowd.
Right.
What had happened is, if we talk about 9 years ago, we have Sedulo version 2. And we started to grow very softly, like 2 members of staff, 3 members of staff, 4 members of staff. But one of our first clients was an SEO company, search engine optimization company. And they came to us with about 5 staff, I think at the time. And SEO wasn't known in them days. That's getting to the top of Google search engines, which everybody knows about now, but they were one of the first. So they came and said, will you be our accountants? And we said, yeah, of course. It was a small fee. We went in and we kind of helped them restructure the finances. And I looked at it and thought, where on earth could you get, if it was Cheetham's DIY and I was selling screwdrivers online, where on earth could I get for hundreds of pounds the same brand? The company we was at could get us to the top of Google Cheetham screwdrivers if that's what we wanted them to do. And B&Q or Wickes or Homebase or whoever their competitors were that were huge at the time, they were either amongst them or above them. And I would say, how on earth could you get for a few £100, that's what they were charging, on the same level advertisement as these huge brands that are out there? Mm-hmm. If you look at Google now and you go to page 1, what it's become is a high street, an electronic version of the high street.
Yeah.
But in 2007, 2008, it was nothing like that. So as I say, Cheetham's DIY.co.uk could easily come above Wickes or Homebase. And it did. So I said to them, you're onto something here. Mm. If you can get such small brands above much bigger brands, you've just got to do it and charge more. So they did. So they started to charge more, and it didn't have an effect whatsoever on the client. Mm. We then brought in share option schemes for them. We sorted all the payroll. We did all the bookkeeping. We raised them some money then because they were starting to grow. And that business we then sold 2 years later for just short of £15 million. We worked very closely with the two brothers who founded that. So we'd done that. That was a great success, early success story, that what I'd kind of set up to do, within one of our first 5 clients, would prove the model of why Sedulo should exist in the market. So we did that, great success story. And then what happened was it got bought by a Swedish PLC. The recession came, and that Swedish PLC approached us and said, we've bought all these marketing agencies. One was in the UK off us, and they'd bought another 10 companies across the world. So they had offices across globally. The one they understood more than any was ours, and that was because of the level of information that we gave to them when they purchased it from us. So they then said, could you go around to all our other acquisitions and see where we actually are? We don't know as much about all the others as what we know about the one we bought from Sedulo. So we did, and maybe there's only 5 or 6 of them, but we had a gig then for about 2 or 3 years where I was actually then on the board of a listed company on the NASDAQ in Stockholm. So I had an apartment in Stockholm, and we went all over the world as a little gang of people, and we'd find out about these businesses, and then we'd help the board of Online Group, as it's called now, which was the Swedish PLC. We would help them sell businesses, buy businesses, merge businesses. So we became very corporate finance based, and we did that. And I don't know the exact details, but it had like a market cap or a worth as a business of about 8 million when we started that project. And when we left that project, it was 60, 70, 80 million. So we'd kind of been part of the journey. We only played a part, but we played quite a big part, and we was doing it almost full time. We kind of helped a listed business go almost tenfold what it was when we started the project. And then we came back to Manchester because the project's over. So we're back in Manchester now. We've moved from Barton Arcade on Deansgate. We're at Deansgate Locks now. And there's about 7 or 8 of us. But we'd not grown because we'd spent most of our time on that project. And then we start working in Manchester. We start working full time in Manchester again as a firm, as a practice. And I was getting really fed up. And whether it was my ego or whatever it was, I was kind of getting miffed at. Other people were talking about other accountancy firms. And I was thinking, who does what? We're 10 people. We was a major part of helping build a business and selling it for 14 million plus. We then took on another project that was listed overseas, international. What other 8-man band accountancy firms are out there doing that? But we were trying to break the door down of, hey, we're here, guys. Do you understand we're here? And we just couldn't get anywhere. So I then took a decision. We just 2 or 3 years, we just keep our head down and we just work and work and we work. And we started to grow then to 12 staff, 15 staff. And we got to about 20 staff and about £1 million turnover. So we was about 6 years in now to Sedulo. I think it was in our 6th year we turned over £1 million. And at that point we had about 20 staff. And that kind of gave me the foundation, I thought, to do something special. Because I thought our staff was special, and I thought our client base was special because we had sports clients, media clients, techie clients, fast growing clients. I thought, but nobody knows about us, what we're going to do. So now I'm back onto your question of why we did this, because then what happened is we had a landlord that we got on really well with, and I went for a coffee with him, and he showed me a premises which we're in today and in Manchester, and it was about 8,000 square foot plus a rooftop. We had 20 staff. Now really you should have 80 staff at least. We had 20, and he said, it'd be great if your lease is nearly up. We had about a year left, or a year and a half. Your lease is nearly up, and I've just bought this great building over the road. Come and have a look at it. And I didn't think anything of it, but I came and had a look at it. And it was an old school firm of tax specialists that had it before. So it was, ceiling tiles with coffee stains on. It was blue carpets. It was dust everywhere. It was a typical old school accountancy shell of an office space. And I don't know what it was, but I just kept thinking, imagine if we only used one floor of it, 4,000 square foot, for still twice as much as what we need for staff, and we create a whole floor where all we do is exactly what you said before. We just put on events, we create an amazing place for our staff to work, we create a bar where we can all socialise, we can bring in our clients and our clients can use it for free. We have 4 meeting rooms, pool tables, sweet shops. We've got a rooftop terrace with a bar on it. I just thought, imagine we could do that. And then I just went off back to doing the thing. And then the landlord kept ringing me saying, sure, you don't fancy moving? I was thinking, it's like 5 times too big for us. Anyway, long story short, one day I said to him, if you pay for a large amount of the fit out, we will sign a decent lease and we'll sign it for 10 years. Again, why would I agree to sign a 10-year lease for a business where it's 4 or 5 times the size of what we need is a bit beyond me, but for some reason I thought this is going to work. So that's what we did. A lot of it was funded by him, so I'm very grateful for him. We signed a 10-year, a long-term lease on it. And that was it. We moved in to Manchester. And that was the beginning of the upstart. Because the ability for us to bring in the credibility we had then with not just our client base, but when they were having meetings, people would think, wow, this is different. All the private equity guys started to come into our events, and it's really, and that was only 2.5 years ago, but the growth from then has been like astronomical for us.
It does work. Everybody that comes in who doesn't know what this is goes, what is this place? And when I told them, they're like,
Yeah.
It's great seeing them make the connection between accountancy and a free bar.
And it's like a secret gem in Manchester because for those of you that are people that don't know about this place, we're on the second floor with a rooftop, so you can't see us from the ground floor. But our Leeds office, of course, which we've since done, we've done on a very similar principle, but completely different themes. We have a chocolate shop there, we have an indoor table tennis lawn, Great Gatsby bar. We'll come on to why we've done that in a little bit. But
conversely, floor-to-ceiling glass windows, so you can see everything.
And you can see it from Park Square in Leeds, which is the best part if you ask me. So you can see it on the ground.
That's an amazing building as well. Amazing building.
And so is this.
Yes, also.
So it's kind of like that old school, and that's what we've done very well here.
Yeah.
It really is that old school exterior and building, and we've kind of a really modern, but it's still a modern old.
Yeah.
It's not modern contemporary.
Well, it marries the two things that you do together really well. But this brings me on to the podcasts and interviews, really, which is kind of part of your events and your culture of Sedulo. What has led you to want to do a kind of podcast and interview series? So, Sedulo gets to a point where we go here, and actually the first year we doubled. So we doubled in size. So from 6 years to get to 1 million, we did 2 million in our 7th year. Year 8, we doubled again. So we're at 4 million then. And we're not far off doubling again. So we've had huge growth. From somebody and we're known now, I think it's fair to say, both the business is known and certain individuals are known. And it's also fair to say that, I guess in a very localised perspective, most people will have heard of me, Sedulo, or both. So I guess I'm quite new to what I would class as semi-successful. I talk to people a lot about this, and I think it's ingrained in a lot of working class people to admit when you are actually successful. I find it quite cringy when people speak about me as successful, and on the flip side, we earn more in a year
profit than what my dad earned in his whole life.
Right.
So to not say I'm successful is ridiculous. So I have that conflict, I guess, that I'm battling with all the time. So I'm kind of coming to terms with I'm semi-successful. And it's pretty new to me. And it's not been an easy journey. And it's not been an easy journey for the first 9.5 years. And it's still not an easy journey now. And I think sometimes people out there need support, particularly of how hard it is. Because if you do look at the social media of many people, it's a very, just like the Instagram has the girl in a gym kit and she takes a selfie and takes it off, she's all makeuped up. It's
drinking
a bit
full fat frappuccino.
There you go. It's a bit like that on the LinkedIn. And it's almost like you set up a business, it's great. Yeah. Here's a picture of my Mac, here's a picture of my coffee, I'm just in the coffee shop, everything's cool, business is great. I feel like there's a lot, LinkedIn sometimes can be a bit like that. I put a post up in June beginning of June saying, I don't know the exact post, but it was like, we're going to have a record month, blah, 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 blah. Because positive people want to hear positive stories, that's for sure. But we didn't hit it. And at the end, I put, this is like a disaster of a month. We didn't hit what we said. I'm so disappointed, and so on and so forth. And the amount of people that I see since then, that was like, I read that, or quite soon after the post, that was like, I seen that post you put the other day. I haven't seen a post like that on LinkedIn because everybody seems to be selling and upselling what it's like to be an entrepreneur. And if you ask me, there's some great parts to it, but there's some, it's certainly not all rosy in the garden being an entrepreneur. So I want to make, whilst it's all new to me and raw, this new kind of, or semi-success, I'm going to keep calling it, whilst it's new and raw, I want to tell everybody my story about what it is. So that's part of it.
There's also the different people that you're interviewing, which we can talk about in a minute. Each person that you interview, there's a slightly different angle with each of them. There's sort of, you talk about mental health, your own struggles with somebody else. You talk about knowing your why and what drives you. What kind of, how can I put this? What are the kind of things that you want people to watch to get from your...
So I think it's a great question, that, and one of the things you just talked about is mental health. And I wouldn't say outspoken, but I do say it as it is, and I'm quite transparent. I'm not a guarded individual, and I'm the same when it comes to mental illness. So people who do know me will know that I will talk a lot about my mental illness, and particularly is anxiety. So I never had any signs of this before I set up the business. After I did, kind of the pressure of that partnership that wasn't really working was a bit destructive. It made me anxious, and I don't mean anxious where I'm a little bit of a worrier. That's not me. I mean anxious where I'm walking down the road one day and I feel something's not right here in my head, and it carries on. I get a bit dizzy. I think, maybe I'm having a funny turn, and then I'm on my hands and knees because my legs have just turned into blocks, and I'm crumpled on the floor in a shopping centre, thinking, this might be the end. I'm a 28, 29-year-old healthy lad doing a lot of sport. I didn't think I was going to die like this. But for those 15 minutes, I was just convinced I was having a heart attack because I couldn't get any breath in. My heart's beating out my chest. I've got pains in my chest. My pins and needles down both legs and both arms. That's how it felt. And I'm lay on the floor. So when I talk about anxiety, that's the level of anxiety I'm talking about. And I didn't know it was anxiety, of course. I thought I was dying. So just to give everyone that background, I then spent 6 months in a state where that would happen probably once a month. And the only way I could get out of that situation was to go to A&E. That's what I did. I went to A&E. And when the doctor put me on an ECG and talked to me calmly and everything came around, and actually then I'd be okay and I'd go home and I'd be a bit dazed, of course. I wouldn't be feeling great, but it would kind of cure my panic attacks, is I guess what they were. So that's the kind of my level of anxiety, and I have to live with that on a day-by-day basis. So almost daily I score myself on where my anxiety level is on a daily basis, and I change my lifestyle accordingly. If I feel like I'm going anything beyond, I like to operate at a 1 or a 2. If I go towards a 4, I will cut out caffeine, I'll cut out alcohol, I will make sure I'm exercising, I'll cut out refined sugars. I'll drink my 2 litres of water a day. So I make real lifestyle changes. And then beyond that, I will start to meditate if I start getting to a 5 or a 6. And I think that's kind of if that didn't work, I'd feel really worried. But I haven't had any of those attacks for now, probably 10 years, because I'm a personal. So one of the things I do want people to get from this is, when that happened, the first thing I thought was, I'm mad. I'm a crazy guy. The more you get to speak to other entrepreneurs, the more you realise that's actually common. It's not just common amongst entrepreneurs, of course, it's common amongst a lot of people. But the more you speak to business owners, and it can be quite a lonely place where sometimes you can't speak to people.
Yeah.
We get a lot of clients who come to us because we're personable, and they can just speak to us.
Yeah.
They don't come to us because we can sell the business or do the wealth management or all those services that we can do for them. They come to us because it gives them a sounding board to talk to. So my podcast is part of that.
Well, and I feel at this point it's kind of good to remind everyone that it's actually called Taking Care of Business, which is kind of the whole point, because it's not just a highlights reel of your business and all your clients. It's about what everyone goes through as an entrepreneur and a sole trader, I
totally.
guess, whatever level you're at.
Yeah, and nobody wants to keep hearing me talking about my mental illness. And so, again, I remember signing our first client, £50 a month. Still a client now. And £600 a year. And I remember the buzz that I got from signing that client way back then. And it came to my attention about 3 months ago, where I looked at the clients we'd signed that day, and we're looking at one of them come back from the World Cup, England squad. One's been on our TV for like 50 years, and one's a really well-known fashion brand. And I remember it kind of dragged my attention to how happy I was signing that graphic designer all those years ago. And now on a day-by-day basis, the foot flow of clients that we sign is just phenomenal. So why not open our client base up to that? Why not open our listeners or whatever, open them up to our client base? Because it's such an eclectic mix of brilliant people. So that's one reason. There's the kind of mental health, saying it as it is, another reason. And you'll find there's a real common theme around people's problems. People meet the success, for example, like they thought £1 million turnover. Yeah. And then they get there, and then they've not even thought about it. And this is me, I'm at 2 million. And then I'm moaning about 2 million, at 5 million. Sometimes you start looking at yourself and thinking, again, you start asking yourself the questions of, am I never going to be happy? Right. Am I ever going to be content? Is that not good enough? And that makes you doubt yourself. So I think by opening up this podcast to our client base and letting the listener hear these common themes that are pulled throughout various business owners, I think that it will be a great help to them.
Brilliant. So who have we got coming up that you can tell us about?
So we're going to do 8 episodes of the first series. Episode 1 is this one. So we're episode 1. Then we've got Holly Moore from Make Events in episode 2. She's a female entrepreneur, started a business on a credit card, similar to me. No private equity, no debt in that business. So she's got a great story. She's dealt with a bit of mental illness in the past. So it's in common theme. Then we've got Daniel Gillings. He's a co-founder of a children's bereavement charity, Once Upon a Smile. I also do a little bit of work with, so that'll be more on his why and that kind of thing. Then we've got Bugsy Malone, who, for those that don't know, is a musician, rap artist, but he's also an entrepreneur. He's a huge success now, and if he wanted, he could sign probably for any major label, but decides to run his own label, do his own marketing, run his own business. So that's going to be an interesting one. And yeah, we've got some more. Pete Calgo's one of them. He's the Mr. JD Sports, and I think what's great about that one is they've just been valued at 5 billion actually, JD, just a few weeks ago, and that's in a time where apparently the high street's dead. So it's going to be great to understand how he's kind of booked that trend, or how JD Sports have booked a trend that everybody else seems to be closing. Every time you turn on the news. So they're the first 5.
Brilliant. Well, we're pretty much at the end now, but a few kind of quick fire questions, I guess. You're not allowed to say a PE teacher, but what was your dream job as a child?
Oh, footballer.
Footballer. Yeah. What do you think your superpower or your kind of USP as an entrepreneur is?
I think it's just drive. I think, and I guess it's going to be a common theme, that one. It'd be interesting to see what the themes are that develop within this podcast, actually. But mine is just a drive. Hunger.
What is your favourite thing about your job?
Helping, just seeing clients achieve. You know, sometimes when we do that sale at the end, knowing that you've been part of that journey, integral to that journey, is the best part. There's other people, by the way, who do a lot of corporate finance deals where somebody comes to them at the end of the journey and says, will you sell my business? We do a little bit of that, but in the main, we're selling clients we've known from an idea.
Brilliant. And what are your plans for Sedulo in the next year? In
the next year, we bought in Leeds, so we're 100 staff now since we did that. Our aim is to get to maybe 200, 250 staff, so it's not so much more than that, but the immediate, so we've bedded in Leeds now. And our next goal is Liverpool and London. We have a satellite office already in London. We have some amazing media clients down there. So we're going to do London, Liverpool by the end of next year. That will see us at about 175 staff. And after that, we're going to go and do some overseas offices to take us to that 250.
Brilliant. Well, watch this space. Thank you all for listening or watching, if indeed you are watching. If you want to keep in touch with all the podcasts and interviews that are happening and connect to the series, you can like this video and subscribe to the links. You can follow us on Twitter at Sedulo MCR for Manchester and Sedulo Leeds for the Leeds one. And you can listen out for our podcasts. Next week, who have we got next week?
Next week is Holly Moore.
Holly Moore, and Paul will be interviewing her himself. So
with some tips from you, I hope.
Thank you very much, and thanks for listening.